In the annals of human history, there are stories that defy all logic and reason. Imagine standing in the bustling streets of London only to encounter a stranger who speaks of a future where flying cars rule the skies and artificial intelligence dictates our every move. Or think about a figure in an old photograph, dressed in clothing that is decades ahead of their time. What if some of these tales are more than just fiction? Could time travel truly exist? Join us as we unravel the most convincing stories of time travelers you'll ever hear. Number 15. Sergey Ponomarenko. In 2006, an extraordinary story began in Kiev when a man named Sergey Ponomarenko was found wandering the streets, appearing lost and disoriented. His clothes were strikingly outdated, and he carried an ancient-looking camera. When a police officer stopped him and asked for identification, Sergey produced an ID card that had been out of use for over 50 years, dating back to the Soviet Union. The card identified him as Sergey Ponomarenko. The police thought he might be mentally unstable and took him to a psychiatric hospital in Kyiv, where psychologist Pavlo Kov began studying his case to uncover who Sergey truly was. During interviews, Sergey claimed he was born in Kyiv on June 16, 1932, and that he was 25 years old, which matched his appearance, even though he should have been in his 70s. Sergey explained that he had gone for a walk and noticed a strange object in the sky. When he took a photo of it, he was suddenly transported to 2006. His camera, handed over to photography expert Vadim Posner, contained film that had not been produced since the 1970s, yet both the camera and film were in pristine condition. When the film was developed, the images revealed scenes of Kiev from the 1950s, including a photograph of Sergey with a young woman and another of the UFO. Shortly after being questioned, Sergey vanished from his locked hospital room, despite the doors being secured and bars on the windows. CCTV footage did not show him leaving, adding to the mystery of his disappearance. Investigations revealed that a man named Sergey Ponomarenko had indeed existed during the Soviet era and was reported missing in the 1960s. The woman in the photo with Sergey was identified as his fiancée, Valentina Kurish, who was still living in Kyiv as a 74-year-old woman. When questioned, Valentina confirmed that she had been engaged to Sergey in the 1950s. She recounted how he disappeared in 1958, reappeared 3 days later, and then vanished again around 1960, never to return. Valentina even provided photos from the 1950s that matched the images Sergey had taken on the day he claimed to have time traveled. Valentina also claimed that Sergey sent her a photograph from the future. This intriguing photo showed an older Sergey alongside the Kyiv skyline, which featured several skyscrapers that didn't exist in 2006 or even today. The photo was dated 2050 and had a handwritten note on the back from Sergey to Valentina, reassuring her that everything was fine and that he would return when he could. However, photo experts have since analyzed the picture and declared it a fake. Since Sergey's mysterious disappearance from the hospital, no one has seen or heard from him. For years, this baffling case has been studied and discussed, with theories ranging from amnesia to an elaborate hoax to one of the greatest time travel mysteries ever. In 2023, a curious YouTuber delved into Sergey's story. He found no evidence to support the existence of Sergey, Valentina, or Vadim Posner. Furthermore, he discovered that the original photos supposedly taken by Sergey, including the famous 2050 Kyiv skyline photo, were missing. The images and video footage used as evidence in the story were taken from a Ukrainian TV show called Aliens, which aired in 2012. Additionally, the film Sergey used in his camera was discontinued in 1990, not the 1970s, making it possible to find a roll in like-new condition in 2006. Despite the case seemingly being debunked, it continues to be widely featured on social media platforms, capturing the imagination of many. Number 14. Mike Markham. In 1995, Mike Markham was busy experimenting with a homemade high-voltage arc in his hometown of Stanberry, Missouri. During one of his experiments, he did something astonishing. He threw a small piece of metal through the device, and to his amazement, it momentarily vanished, only to reappear a few meters away. This incident, according to urban legend, convinced Mike that time travel was within reach. However, the components needed to generate the required energy were costly. In a desperate bid to get the parts he needed, Mike broke into the local power plant and stole $20,000 worth of transformers. This act led to a neighborhood power outage and his subsequent arrest for theft, landing the aspiring time traveler in jail. Despite his setback, Mike made several appearances on a radio show where he shared his adventurous theories and updates on his time machine project with fascinated listeners. Then, in 1997, something extraordinary happened. Mike disappeared without a trace. Just before he vanished, he had mentioned that his time machine was almost complete and that he planned to travel back in time. Shortly after his mysterious disappearance, a listener contacted the radio show with a bizarre story from the 1930s. According to the tale, the police had discovered a dead man on a California beach. The unidentified victim had been crushed inside a strange metal tube, and near the body was a mysterious device that resembled a modern cell phone. This eerie coincidence fueled speculation that Mike might have succeeded in his quest for time travel, only to meet a tragic end in the past. Number 13. Cell phones from the future. One of the most famous instances often cited as evidence of time travel is the Charlie Chaplin's cell phone lady incident from 1928. In this old film footage, a woman appears to be talking on what looks like a cell phone, which seems out of place for the time. Some speculate she might have traveled back in time with a special mission, but got confused and ended up in a Charlie Chaplin movie instead. Of course, that theory has its skeptics, who argue that the woman was likely using a hearing aid, a device that was invented back in the late 1800s. In the 1920s, hearing aids looked similar to what we see in the footage. Interestingly, this isn't the only peculiar instance of someone appearing to use a device like a cell phone before they were commonly known. Another video, this time from a 1938 film, shows a person holding an object that resembles a modern cell phone. The confusion continues with footage from a 1995 Mike Tyson fight, where a person in the crowd seems to be holding something that strongly resembles a smartphone. It's these curious instances that fuel debates and speculations about the possibility of time travel and technology ahead of its time. Number 12. The Man from Lazaria. In the year 1850, a man named Jafar Forin was discovered wandering without purpose through a small village near Frankfurt, Germany. His grasp of German was rudimentary, but when questioned by the village leader, he asserted that he hailed from a distant land called Lazaria, situated in a region of the world known as Sakria. Forin struggled with basic German but primarily communicated in what he referred to as the Aryan and Abramian languages. Forin identified himself as a Christian who had embarked on a journey to Europe in search of his long-lost brother. He recounted a harrowing shipwreck that left him stranded in an unfamiliar place. When shown a map, he couldn't trace his route and maintained that Lazaria lay hundreds of miles away from Europe, separated by vast oceans. He also mentioned that Sakria was one of 5 regions on Earth, alongside Afla, Asla, Upla, and another unnamed region. Forin's case was not unique in history. Similar stories have emerged over time, although Forin's account stands among the earliest documented. John Timms detailed Forin's story in his 1852 book, Yearbook of Facts in Science and Art, which was highly regarded for its accuracy during that era. Local authorities in Frankfurt were perplexed by Forin's claims and eventually decided to send him to Berlin for further examination, reportedly under the scrutiny of scientists. However, records of his fate are scant, and little is known about what ultimately became of him. Number 11. Andrew Carlson. In 2003, a newspaper published a shocking story about a man named Andrew Carlson, who was arrested for insider stock market trading. According to the Security and Exchange Commission, Carlson miraculously turned an initial investment of just $800 into a staggering $350 million portfolio through risky trades. Authorities were baffled because his trades seemed to rely on confidential information only insiders could access. During interrogation by the FBI, Carlson made an astounding claim. He asserted he was a time traveler from the year 2256. Carlson explained his strategy was to make inconspicuous trades, but admitted he got carried away and amassed a fortune due to his advanced knowledge. Despite skepticism, Carlson persisted in his story under FBI questioning. Desperate to return to the year 2256, Carlson pleaded for release but refused to reveal where his time machine was hidden, fearing misuse of its technology. Scheduled for a court appearance in April 2003, Carlson vanished en route, adding to the mystery. Background checks revealed no trace of Andrew Carlson before December 2002, leaving his bizarre tale unresolved and him never to be seen again. Number 10. Project Pegasus. Andrew Basiago, a candidate for the U.S. presidency in 2015, caused a stir with an extraordinary tale a few years back. He asserted that back in the 1970s, the United States government was actively exploring the possibilities of time travel. At the center of this secret effort was Project Pegasus, which not only delved into teleportation, but also purportedly sent personnel into the future to gather critical insights into global events. How did Basiago become privy to such mind-boggling information? According to his account, he was among the young participants used as test subjects in these groundbreaking experiments. He claims that substantial taxpayer funds were allocated to these endeavors, all rooted in Einstein's special theory of relativity. However, due to the perceived dangers and unpredictability associated with time travel, the government eventually halted Project Pegasus. Adding to the intrigue, Basiago's assertions extend to claims of visiting Mars and even witnessing the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. While these claims are bold, Basiago supports his narrative with what he believes to be a photograph from 1863 showing a young boy, who he claims is himself, present during that historic era. Number 9. Echoes of Versailles. In 1901, two professors from St. Hugh's College in Oxford, England, embarked on a journey to France to visit the Palace of Versailles. During their explorations around a small chateau known as Petit Trianon within the palace grounds, something extraordinary occurred. The professors claimed that they suddenly found themselves surrounded by people dressed in attire from the 1780s, and to their utter disbelief, they spotted Marie Antoinette herself, seated on a stool in the gardens. This encounter seemed utterly improbable since Marie Antoinette, the final queen of France, had met her demise through the guillotine in 1793, charged with treason. Their bewilderment only deepened when, as they recounted, the period-clad figures and the queen inexplicably vanished just as a tour guide approached them. This bizarre experience left an indelible impression on the professors, prompting them to document their account in a book titled An Adventure, published in 1911 under the pen names Elizabeth Morrison and Francis Lamont. This incident has gained significant attention due to the credibility of the authors and the detailed nature of their narrative. Many speculate that such episodes could be indicative of time slips, where individuals might inadvertently slip through time or experience anomalous visions. Was this a genuine encounter with a rift in time, or perhaps a shared hallucination? Number 8. The Tor Man. The mystery of the Tor Man has intrigued people for decades. It all started in July 1954 at Tokyo Airport in Japan, when a man of Western descent arrived. Everything about him seemed ordinary until airport officials inspected his passport. To their surprise, it claimed he was from a country called Taured, a place they had never heard of and later discovered did not exist. Puzzled by this discrepancy, officials questioned the man. He confidently pointed to the location on the map where he believed Taured should be, but to his frustration it coincided with the Principality of Andorra, a name he claimed never to have heard before. This confusion escalated, leaving both the man and officials bewildered. The situation intensified when the man disappeared from his guarded hotel room while officials investigated his background. He was never seen again, leaving behind a trail of perplexing questions. The first accounts of this bizarre incident surfaced in Colin Wilson's book, The Directory of Possibilities, initially presenting it as fact. 16 years later, Tom Slem published Strange but True, Mysterious and Bizarre People, recounting the tale without providing additional evidence, which sparked skepticism about its authenticity. Similar to other unexplained cases, theories abound regarding the Tor Man's origin. Some speculate he might have traversed from a different era, where his homeland underwent a name change. Alternatively, he could have come from a future timeline where Taured replaced Andorra. Of course, skeptics suggest the entire story might be a crafted hoax or urban legend propagated for entertainment by Colin Wilson. The mystery of the Taured Man persists, challenging our understanding of reality and time. What do you think happened? Number 7. John Titor. John Titor, purportedly born in 1998, made his debut on internet forums just 2 years later, not due to exceptional talent, but because he claimed to originate from the year 2036. In his online messages, he identified himself as an American soldier stationed in Tampa, Florida, involved in a secret government project focused on time travel. According to Titor, this project transported him back to the year 1975. The mission had a specific objective: retrieving an IBM 5100 computer crucial for debugging old programs in the future. Alongside his duty, Titor also made a personal detour to the year 2000 to recover lost photographs from what he vaguely referred to as the Civil War. This detail raised eyebrows, leaving many to ponder which Civil War he meant. Titor's predictions turned darker when he foretold a violent conflict erupting in the United States in 2008, leading to its division into 5 large regions instead of the traditional 50 states. By 2015, he claimed, the chaos would spill beyond American borders, culminating in a brief but intense Third World War. Yet, as time unfolded, none of his forecasts materialized, prompting skepticism about his credibility. However, Titor offered an intriguing defense for his failed prophecies. He invoked the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, suggesting that events in his timeline diverged from ours. In his view, catastrophic events might still occur but on a different timeline, delaying their manifestation in our reality. The saga of John Titor continues to captivate minds, challenging beliefs about time, prophecy, and the boundaries of reality. Number 6. Sir Victor Goddard. Sir Robert Victor Goddard was not just a member of the British Royal Air Force, but also a distinguished veteran of both World Wars, which is quite impressive. By the end of World War II, he had earned decorations for his bravery and was even knighted by the Queen in recognition of his service. In 1935, Goddard was on a routine flight from Edinburgh, Scotland to London when he flew over an airfield in Drem, a village in Scotland. This airfield had been abandoned for over 2 decades and was in a state of disrepair, with overgrown grass and cows grazing near the landing strip. The buildings were dilapidated and showed signs of neglect. As he continued his flight, Goddard encountered an unusual storm characterized by a bluish-yellowish tint. Concerned about the weather, he decided to turn back and return to the Drem airfield to wait out the storm. However, upon his return, he was stunned to find that the airfield had completely transformed. It was no longer abandoned. Instead, it appeared fully operational and well-maintained. Even more perplexing, mechanics were working on yellow planes, a type of aircraft he had never seen before. Years later, during World War II, the Drem airfield was indeed brought back into use by the British military. It was used for training exercises, and notably, yellow planes similar to those Goddard had described were used. This led to speculation that Goddard had somehow glimpsed into the future during his flight, witnessing a time when the airfield would be restored and used for wartime efforts. Despite the intriguing nature of his experience, Goddard's alleged time travel did not alter the course of history in a significant way. World War II still occurred, and the opportunity to prevent historical events like Hitler's rise to power remained unrealized. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. In the dimly lit corner of an ancient library, Professor Elias Martin discovered a dusty, leather-bound book titled "The Most Convincing Stories of Time Traveler You'll Ever Hear." Intrigued, he cracked it open, revealing tales that seemed too fantastical to be true. One story in particular caught his eye. It recounted the adventures of a man named Victor, who claimed to have traversed time using an enigmatic pocket watch. Victor described meeting Shakespeare and providing him with inspiration for his plays, witnessing the fall of the Berlin Wall, and even having tea with a future monarch on Mars. Each tale was detailed with such precision that Elias could almost smell the Elizabethan air and hear the cheers of freedom in 1989. The professor couldn't shake the feeling that these stories were more than mere fiction. He dug deeper, eventually finding a hidden compartment in the book containing the very pocket watch described. Skeptical but curious, he wound the watch and felt a sudden dizzying pull. When he opened his eyes, Elias found himself amidst a bustling Elizabethan marketplace. At that moment, he realized the truth. Victor's tales weren't just stories, they were a chronicle of real adventures. And now, Elias was poised to write the next chapter in The Most Convincing Stories of Time Traveler You'll Ever Hear. Number 5. Alfred Beck. In 1984, the Philadelphia Experiment hit theaters, captivating audiences with its thrilling portrayal of wartime turmoil during World War II. The film delved into a secret U.S. government project aimed at blending supernatural elements with actual warfare strategies to confuse enemy forces and render them vulnerable to attack. The Navy's ambitious undertaking involved developing technology to cloak warships from radar detection. However, during one test, the ship reportedly vanished completely after a sudden burst of lightning, only to reappear moments later. Crew members emerged severely traumatized, describing eerie supernatural encounters. Some suffered serious injuries, while others were diagnosed as clinically insane. Alfred Beck, who watched the film in the 1980s, became deeply fascinated by its themes. Shortly afterward, he began experiencing fragmented memories that inexplicably surfaced in his mind. These memories felt vividly real, intensifying over time and causing Alfred to fear for his sanity. Seeking medical help, he explained these troubling flashbacks of a life he had never lived but felt intimately connected to. As the memories gradually merged, Alfred became convinced he was actually Edward Cameron, a real-life crew member from the Philadelphia Experiment, reincarnated after the tragic events. Edward Cameron allegedly witnessed the bizarre sequence of events firsthand as a soldier. When the experimental equipment aboard the ship activated, chaos erupted among the crew. In a desperate bid to escape, Edward leaped overboard, expecting to plunge into the sea. Instead, he found himself waking up in a hospital in the year 2137. Subsequently, he claimed to have awakened again in the distant future of 2749, having been conscripted by the government for numerous other time travel missions before his soul reincarnated into Alfred Beck's body. Alfred steadfastly maintained the truth of these extraordinary events, insisting they were real and profoundly impactful on his life. Number 4. Paul Amadeus. Paul Amadeus Dienach, a Swiss man, fell into a deep coma in 1921 and remained unconscious for about a year. When he finally woke up, he astonished everyone around him with an inexplicable knowledge of physics. Before this, he had never studied physics or worked in the field. How could a regular person, after waking from such a long coma, suddenly possess the expertise of a physicist? According to Paul, during his coma, his consciousness inhabited the body of a man named Andrew Northam, who lived in the year 3906. Andrew was a physics teacher in this distant future, and Paul lived through an entire year in Andrew's life. During this time, Paul learned about future events that would unfold in world history. He predicted looming challenges such as overpopulation, famine, and climate change, which would drive people to forge new spiritual paths outside conventional society. He also foresaw a devastating world war that would ravage large parts of the planet, followed by a global unity among the survivors. Paul's revelations didn't end there. He claimed that humanity would eventually be visited by extraterrestrial beings who would aid in humanity's survival and advancement. These visitors would ensure that every person on the transformed Earth would have a home, enough food, and access to boundless knowledge. When Paul emerged from his coma and shared his extraordinary story, many dismissed him as either a liar or someone who had dreamt it all up. Despite skepticism, Paul stood by his account, finding a small group of believers who supported his claims. He passed away in 1924, leaving behind a legacy of intrigue and unanswered questions about the nature of his experience. Number 3. Time slip on Highway 56. In 1972, 4 college students embarked on a road trip along Highway 56 in the southwestern USA, a route rumored to be haunted. They had just attended a rodeo in Nevada and were heading back to their dorm at Southern Utah University. Taking a northbound exit, they expected to reach their destination, but instead found themselves on a peculiar stretch of road, suddenly paved in white and ending abruptly at a rock wall that hadn't been there before. Feeling bewildered, they turned their car around, only to discover that the landscape had completely transformed. Fields and forests now sprawled where barren land had stood moments earlier. Perplexed and seeking directions, they stopped at a roadside diner. When one of the girls rolled down the window to speak to a person leaving the diner, she screamed for the driver to speed away. She claimed the person looked inhuman. To their shock, they were then pursued by futuristic trikes. But after a brief chase, they found themselves back on the correct road again. Reflecting on the bizarre encounter, the girl who saw the inhuman figure believed they had briefly traveled to a distant future. Number 2. The Vanishing Hotel. In October 1979, after months of hard work, 2 married couples who were close friends finally had the chance to take a well-deserved break. Jeff and Pauline, along with their friends Len and Cynthia, planned a holiday together in Spain. To reach their destination, they had to drive through France, so they began their journey looking for a place to stay near the town of Montélimar. Their search for accommodation hit a snag when the first motel they found was overcrowded. Undeterred, they continued their quest and stumbled upon a quaint street adorned with historic buildings and vintage circus posters. Luck was on their side this time, as they discovered a hotel where they could immediately check in. The rooms seemed frozen in time. The doors lacked the modern locks of the time, opting instead for bolts. The bathrooms were outdated, and the beds were adorned with calico sheets, a fabric rarely used for bedding in recent decades. Despite these peculiar circumstances, the 2 couples decided to spend the night at the hotel. The next morning, as they headed down for breakfast, 3 unfamiliar individuals entered the establishment who seemed distinctly out of place. One woman wore an outdated dress, while the uniforms of the police officers accompanying her had been obsolete for over 70 years. Adding to the intrigue, the friends were pleasantly surprised when they received an incredibly low bill for their stay. After enjoying a relaxing 2-week holiday in Spain, it was time for the couples to return home. They planned another stopover at the peculiar yet affordable hotel, only to find that the building had vanished without a trace. Despite being in the same location with old houses and circus advertisements, there was no sign of the hotel. Adding to the mystery, all the photographs they had taken during their stay at the hotel were missing when developed. Even when Len and Cynthia returned to the area in the 1980s, the hotel remained inexplicably absent. This raised profound questions. How could a building simply disappear? Believers in unconventional explanations suggest the couples might have experienced a time jump. They theorize the hotel briefly traveled to the future before returning to its own time. Yet this theory leaves unanswered questions. Why were the hotel staff unfazed by the guests' modern attire? And why did they accept contemporary currency? Number 1. Alexander Smith. In a video released in February 2018, a man named Alexander Smith makes an extraordinary claim. He asserts that he's a time traveler who journeyed to the year 2118. According to Smith, he was among the first to test time travel technology as part of a covert CIA mission in 1981. He explains that he had to live in hiding because a group was searching for him. Smith goes on to reveal startling insights about the future. By the mid-21st century, he claims, the existence of intelligent alien life becomes widely acknowledged, although it has been kept secret by governments for many years. During his visit to 2118, Smith alleges encountering a statue of Jamie Oliver, a figure he learned would become President of the United States and later meet a tragic fate. Toward the end of the interview, Smith surprises viewers by pulling out a photograph he purportedly took in the year 2118. He explains that the slight distortion in the image resulted from the complex process of time travel. Which of these time-traveling stories sound most convincing? Let us know your opinion in the comments below.